Good evening, Philip Sobolove, live from Mombasa, Kenya, Seki Mtwapa. Reading from the Message of Awakening tonight. Be who you already are. Be who you already are. You are the divine light and consciousness of life itself. Allow yourself to be who you already are and shine that light from the depth of your soul where you're connected with the one life, out through your energy chakras to your heart and mind, your voice, your actions as a witness to the one life. When you try to become more and more out of a sense of inadequacy or guilt about being the unconscious within you in your past, you have forgotten who you truly are. You still believe that the unconsciousness and conditioned mental patterns, which is beyond your control, is you. If the one life created you as an expression of divinity, if we came from that place, why can't we recognize who we are? How do we recognize who we are? First, we must recognize who we are not. We are not our thoughts. We are not our emotions. We are not our possessions. We are not our life story. We are not the body. We are not any of the things in our life. We are life itself, pure consciousness, pure eternal awareness, just like we were when we were born as a child, before the conditional thinking of the ego mind started to program our minds into thinking unconsciously. This is why Jesus said, to enter the kingdom of heaven, you must become like a child. He didn't mean to shrink our physical body or to act childish ways. He meant that we needed to first to free ourselves from the possession of the ego mind and the compulsive conditioned thinking that keeps us trapped in unconsciousness, trapped in the world of form. Trapped in the world of form. Another great spiritual teacher, Raman Maharshi, taught a very similar thing. Just go through and check off what you are not, and all that remains is you. Once you realize what you are not, and you've gone through everything, the only thing that remains is who you are, the self. But not the self in an egoic sense, the self in terms of the larger self, the one consciousness that we all are. I've said this many times, you can't show me where your mind ends and mine begins, because there is no such a delineation in consciousness. It's all one consciousness. Okay? It's all one consciousness. And it's beyond form. Consciousness is formless. It's the primordial ground before all things arise. And without it, nothing would exist. Only nothing would exist. That's an interesting word. Nothing, no thing would exist. Without consciousness, no thing would exist. In the Tao it says, the one that begets the many things. The one thing that begets the 10,000 things. That's who you are. And at the core of that is Satchitananda, being, consciousness, and bliss. That's who we all are. The one life, the one consciousness, the one love, the one joy, the one peace, the one beauty. That's who we all are. I was listening to a video yesterday about death and near-death experiences, and this neuroscientist was talking about what happens after you die. And he says very clearly, the ego diminishes, the ego is gone, and we merge into the universe, the oneness of the universe, the oneness of the universe. And it requires that we let go of everything to do that. And I said, well, you don't have to wait till you die to do that. You can do that consciously while you're alive. That's called enlightenment. In the Buddhist tradition in Tibet, they talk about opportunities for enlightenment in death, in the bardos of death. In the Tibetan Book of the Dead, it talks about the various processes that people go through when they die. The shutting down of the body, the light that comes to you in many forms, and each one of these lights that comes to you in the bardo is an opportunity to become enlightened, if you're willing to let go of your attachment to the world. But sometimes those attachments to the world are so strong that we can't do it. We struggle and we suffer when we die because we don't let go. But if you let go while you're alive, and you happen to die, which I don't think people will die once the kingdom comes, but during this time when death is still here, if you're able to practice this letting go while you're alive, when the moment of death comes, the transition will be easy, because you won't have any attachments holding you to this world. This is what Jesus talks about, transcending the world, being in the world but not of the world. He said, I have transcended the world. It means he's let go of any attachments to the world. And he stands as a witness to the world, but not in the world. This is what happens in enlightenment. You know, you're on the other shore now. You've gone from the ego shore through the stream to the enlightenment shore, and you stand above the world and beyond the world. And that's the end of suffering. There's no more unhappiness. The only way you can find true happiness in life is to find yourself, to find your divine soul, and transcend the world. What's the reason why people are unhappy? Attachment to things. Attachment to things creates suffering. Because inevitably when you lose things, you feel a loss, and that loss creates sadness and misery. Well, if you didn't have an attachment to it in the beginning, to begin with, and you lose it, it's like c'est la vie. Okay? And I lost everything. I lost my house, I lost my cars, I lost my mind, I lost my family, I lost everything. I suffered greatly until the day I realized that, hey, they're just things. Things come and go. Money comes and goes. Holding on to things is futile. The more I let go and the more I let life flow, the happier I become. And the more I grasp at things and try to possess things and control things, the more misery I create. So be a creator of happiness by transcending things and realizing who you are already inside yourself as a divine soul. So you're not your thoughts. Your thoughts, I heard there's about 60,000 thoughts a day each person goes through. If you were to write down every one of them, you would basically check yourself into a mental hospital, because many of them are just totally insane and make no sense whatsoever. You're not your emotions, because the emotions are created by the thoughts. If you're not your thoughts, you also obviously are not your emotions. Okay? You're not your things, your possessions. You're not your image in the world. That's not who you are. That's all ego. You're not any of these things. So what are you? Pure consciousness, pure awareness. That's why Jesus said in the Bible, unless you become like children, unless you restore your original innocence, you cannot enter the kingdom. Unless you let go of all the things in your life, including thought forms. Thoughts and emotions are forms. Okay? Unless you let go of all of it, you can never know who you are as the pure consciousness and witness to all things. That's the path of enlightenment. That's where we're all headed, whether we know it or not. We're all headed to enlightenment. We're all headed back to our Father in heaven, to the oneness with our Father in heaven and the oneness with our Mother on earth. We're all headed back there. The question is, are we going cooperatively through spiritual practice, or are we going reluctantly, kicking and screaming all the way? God's creation and the perfection of his creation and his kingdom on the earth will come. But it takes the cooperation of man. But the power of that is inevitable. That's why when he let loose the seventh plague, which is the coronavirus, in Revelation it says, it is done, it's finished. The will is finished. Now it's only a matter of time before it manifests. We're not waiting any longer for centuries and centuries of time to pass before the will is manifest. It's happening in our midst right now, all over the world. You can see signs everywhere. If you have eyes to see, you can see it everywhere. So be who you already are. You were born, your soul was incarnated into your body. Your soul is a divine spark of God itself, of God Himself. And that flame was put in your body, incarnated into your body. That flame is the flame of pure consciousness and pure awareness. Without it, you would never be able to perceive anything. That's the fundamental essence of who you are. But because of the fall, we lost it. We became confused. We became deceived by thing consciousness, separation consciousness, thingness. And we lost our sense of perception of the nothingness that is the base